the slide properly.
Everything looks great.
Thank you. So let me get started. The title of my presentation is Teaching Japanese Honorifics More Effectively. Here is the outline for today's talk. So there will be 22 slides in total. So if you want to know where I am, you can follow the page number on the right bottom corner. So first, let me do a very brief intro. So the slide that you're seeing is actually the background slide of why I'm researching on the topic for my dissertation. So in a nutshell, I noticed that there's a discrepancy between what's taught in the classroom and what's used in real life in terms of honorific language. Don't worry, I haven't explained what Japanese honorifics are yet. You miss nothing. It will show up later. And then also there's an obsession on using correct honorifics in the manuals in Japan. And there's misconception of the relationship between honorifics and politeness. I'm going to touch a little bit upon that as well. And then there's, of course, diversity in the usages of honorifics and multifunctionality of honorifics. It almost sounds like cliche, but that's not necessarily reflected in the classroom teaching. So for today's presentation, finally, I have a chance to teach Japanese as a full-time instructor. This presentation will focus on how exactly I applied my research to classroom teaching and what I have done differently. So it's pretty different from normal academic research. I don't particularly have methodology or result or discussion section. Just heads up. So here is a definition of honorifics. Probably I should not say redefining because I haven't defined it yet. So this is a table that I am going to refer to throughout today's presentation. So you will hear me use RH for referent honorifics, and it's as the label suggests that when I say RH referent honorifics, the honorific would elevate the reference. And if I say AH, that refers to addressee honorifics, which means that the speaker is trying to elevate the addressee. Now here's an even more scaring table of Japanese honorifics. And don't be surprised if I tell you that it means the same thing as a previous table, but this is more widely accepted in Japan by domestic linguists. And also the reason why I'm showing this somewhat more complicated table is that this is a categorization that's more adopted almost in all textbooks that are used in higher ed in the United States. So you will see a module introducing respect forms. As I'm pointing here, humiliative forms. 1, humiliative forms. 2, which they call extra modest forms in Genki, and polite forms, beautification forms. My goal is not for you to read everything or to comprehend the whole table. If you can only get one takeaway from today's presentation, I hope that it's this sentence. Honorifics index interpersonal relationships. Honorifics point to interpersonal relations, the distance between interlocutors. Please pay attention here that I didn't use hierarchical relationships or social relationships because I also want to include psychological distance here. And for my dissertation research, I had an extensive theoretical background and chapter on the meanings of honorifics, namely that if you allow me to go back to the previous slide, one of the main criticism of this widely adopted categorization is that they can be really misleading by using this semantic-oriented categorization method. So you see the respect, you may be like, oh, all the words are to show respect, or polite forms, right? Oh, once you use it, you are polite, which is not necessarily the case because we can have one form mapping to multiple functions for honorifics. So I won't go through the whole table extensively, but this is to show you that forms can be mapped to multiple meanings, and there is no one-on-one mapping between form and function. Maybe I'll just point you to one meaning as I show here, educatedness, adequate, professionality as something for the lexical category, which means respect form, humiliative form 1, and humiliative form 2. So because we're going to use this meaning later in today's presentation. Cool. Let me move on to something that I did in my classroom. So since we know that the usage of honorifics is diverse and it's not static, like if we just say, okay, respect forms are always for showing respect, we would almost always find the static distribution in the usage, but that's not the case. So this section, I'm going to illustrate how I use some material, including existing material in textbook and some animation clips to prove my point. So since nobody reads Japanese, let me quickly proceed to the transcription page. So this is a conversation from the 3rd edition textbook of Genki. And yeah, so don't worry about the circle. It's shown here. The yokata part maps the red circle in the previous page. As you read through the transcript, I have the translation in lighter color, and all the landlord's line are in green, and John, who rented the home, will be in blue. Basically, this conversation said that John unfortunately got robbed. And then this conversation basically says, okay, the rob is caught and is arrested, and the police called, and the landlord told John, oh, no need to worry anymore. I have updated lock, and you're lucky that you get friends, help you through this tough period. That's it. So actually, this module focuses on passive voice, like my room is robbed, my purse is stolen, those kind of forms. But in this conversation, we have this interesting playing form that appears in all addressee honorific conversations. So the playing forms means no honorifics. But why does John suddenly switch to the playing form? If you ask students, they might be able to tell you, oh, we think that John is like exclamating, saying, oh, I'm so glad. He's talking about his own feeling. So that's why he has zero psychological distance to himself. So he's not particularly talking to the landlord. He's talking to himself. So he's using the playing form. Actually, the students may be able to notice that point. And the single job of the language teacher is to flag that and say, hey, remember we did something previously on polite form. Why do you think John says this? And the whole process can take, as little as 1 minute to use this actually existing conversation in the normative textbook to show students, to demonstrate that actually we do have some flexible usages of honorifics. I have another example from another intermediate advanced textbook that you can refer to in my paper. I will not give you another example from textbook. And now here is an example from animation. So I'm going to read through this slide. Card capture Sakura, maybe you know it or maybe not, is a conversation between Sakura and Tomoyo. So Sakura is the brown-haired character you will see later, and Tomoyo is the gray-haired character. So Tomoyo speaks the so-called princess language. In addition to rising intonation wa, you will probably be able to get it because she uses everywhere. She constantly uses polite forms, so one, and even respect forms to her best friend Sakura, whereas Sakura, the brown-haired character, uses normal playing forms as other female students would do. So instead of being estranged or like one classmate is surrendering to her best friend, right? If you think the usage of honorifics is hierarchical, no, this gray-haired girl's usage of polite forms and honorifics in general, highlights her proper adequate as a young lady. So this is the fourth order meaning that I just reminded you. So it's not just like, oh, to show respect or, their language usage is asymmetrical, but it doesn't mean that one is inferior than the other. Instead, the gray-haired girl is just flexing, I am princess, I am from a rich family, I am well educated. So someone of you might argue that the so-called princess language is a type, of role language, and it's a full other story that I will not have time to go into today. But my counter argument is that it is because that is so ideological and somewhat artificial in animation that it's pure than real life usage, and it's actually easier for students to pick up, when they have this distinct characters described through honorifics usage. And another advantage of using animation is that students are more engaged with that. I picked this one because I know that my students have watched it before, like most of them. So they don't have to do another Wikipedia search of, what this novel is about, what's the character relationship. They already have the content knowledge. Now the job of the language instructor is to use their known material to demonstrate some new usages of language or help them notice something that they just ignored when they watched, the animation in English subtitles. So I hope you can enjoy this short piece of Japanese animation. Let me know if there's no sound. Okay, fingers crossed.
Sorry, there's no sound. You probably, when you share the screen, you have to click that share the sound as well. If you stop sharing and then you share again, and then on the right-hand side, there's include sound.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so just for time's sake, you can read the subtitles, and sorry for the tech problem. It's not a necessity. Okay, so for plan B, I have the transcript for you here. So you can read, basically the translation maps the English subtitles. I have all the wa labeled here in bold, but it's actually not relevant to what I'm talking today. It's please pay more attention to the AH, address the honorific here. As you can see in green lines, which means the gray-haired character, she has the AH and the wa, the AH and the wa, address the honorific and even respect forms. And wa, you have many occurrences. However, for the blue lines, right, for the brown-haired character, you see nothing. Like she's just in plain forms all the time. So as I said, the usage is asymmetrical, but it really shows the character of both of them. Okay, I think I have another example in my paper. So if you're interested, you can read that as well. And so here comes the assessment part. So I'm going to share what I have been doing when I introduced honorific to my students. So for those of you who are in pedagogy, you're probably familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. So here is the cognitive domain. Like this is very self-explanatory, right? We have remember as the most fundamental, basic level of cognitive domain, and then we have create at the very top. So in this pyramid shape, we also see how the cognitive skills are hierarchical. So you cannot ask students to create if they haven't understand a concept yet. Similarly, you cannot ask them to analyze something if they haven't even remembered something yet. So I would say for my students, although they might be in intermediate level, in CEFR, they'll be B1 something. But when I introduce honorifics to them, I will focus my assessment on the remembering part. Here is what I am doing. I have a sample writing task for you to read. I also have a sample speaking task that I have in my paper. So I'll give you 1 minute to read, and I will shut up for 1 minute.
You have 5 minutes left, Tarani.
Thank you. Okay, time is almost up. Let's go through them together. So here you can see that I try to give students one of a plausible scenario to work with so I still strive to adapt the thing to fit the thing into a usage-based task, right? I want to give them a communicative task, but my assessment would focus on remembering, like the bottom layer of Bloom taxonomy. So I give them some specific context of our institution. So please feel free to swap those with the program that offer through your institutions. And then here, if you're Japanese teachers, you might laugh at this one. Only when necessary, yes. When we introduce this thing, everyone is so excited. Everyone like just conjugate all the verbs into honorifics. So I still want them, as the module final summative assessment, I want them to go for a little bit more naturalness, meaning that when they don't need it, they should not put it. But still it doesn't work. Like at this time teachers just smile and let it go. It happens to all learners. I did that too. And then I also imply the usage of honorifics to my students here, right? So it's basically for people who you don't know very well. So I say pretend that you don't know your teacher very well, because we're a small liberal arts college, so students are really close to the professors. And then I have some scaffolding, like please do give some reason why you are interested in the program, right? This is the only thing that I ask them to do, why you're interested. So in terms of asking for a recommendation letter. So I have some scaffolding and I'm going to talk about that later. And then a growth mindset, right? It's okay to sound awkward or unnatural. It's not like, oh, they make a mistake, point down, deduct points, right? I really want them to be like, okay, we are only at the memorization stage. I don't need you to be fluent in that. And I'm not going to assess you on that. And also, I think the adequate thing is very important to include too. I got this note from my own professor when I was a sophomore, so I still appreciate that note. So I'm glad that I have this opportunity to insert that in. Okay, so quickly, this is the second to last, maybe, or third to last slide. So please read through the rubric in 10 seconds. Okay, I'll be quick and accelerate from here. So focus on the basics. Okay, so this is the target of the module. So I really care if there's any misuses of honorifics. So I put the highest weight there. And also here is the important accommodation that I mean. So I'll provide some comments when grading your assignments if necessary. I make sure that I don't grade on the cultural aspect. Say a very classic example is that students may say, oh, I think I'm a good candidate for this program. Could you write me a recommendation letter? In Japanese, we don't say that. We say, I think I can make some contribution to the program. Could you write me? So you see how the culture plays a part. So if you want students to be able to do that, instructors, or if you want to grade that, we need to provide students scaffolding before asking them to do. Since I didn't, so I make sure that I don't grade on that. Okay. Lastly, okay, so here's the redefining, honorifics part, index interpersonal relationship, my single takeaway from for you, no one-on-one mapping, multifunctional, and materials. We can use textbooks as exit materials and have them watch some anime, and teachers can help them notice the diverse usages of honorifics. And for assessment, just make sure that they align with our teaching objectives, and let's build layer by layer up the Bloom taxonomy. That's it. Thank you so much. Sorry for
No,
over 2 minutes.
perfect. Almost.